Part 1. The Metronome of Hell. The piano keys were beautiful and white, but my small fingers were always stained with red blood. I did not play music for joy. I played for my life. My name is Leo, and my childhood was a quiet, terrible nightmare. My mother, Martha, was my prison guard. She forced me to sit at the heavy wooden piano for 10 hours every single day. The door to my small room was always locked from the outside. I was not allowed to have friends or play in the sun. If the piano music stopped for even 1 minute, terrible things happened. My mother would immediately unlock the door and rush inside. She always carried a thick, hard wooden ruler. Her eyes would look completely cold and empty as she hit my hands without mercy. I hated the piano, and I grew to hate my mother deeply. I believed she was a cruel, heartless monster. I thought she only cared about making me a famous musician. I thought she wanted to squeeze every drop of talent out of my tired body. One cold winter day, I was incredibly sick. I had a high fever, and my whole body was shaking. I simply could not press the heavy piano keys anymore. I stopped playing and rested my hot head against the cool wood for just 5 minutes. The door crashed open instantly. My mother ran into the room. She did not check my fever or ask if I was okay. She grabbed my shoulders and slapped my face so hard my lips started bleeding. She forced my bleeding hands back onto the keys. "Play," she screamed at me. She locked the door again, leaving me crying and playing through my sickness. That night, my heart turned into solid ice. I started searching her room for answers. I needed to know why she was torturing me so terribly. While she was sleeping, I quietly opened her desk drawer. I found a stack of dirty, threatening letters. They were from a dangerous, violent gang called the Shatters. The letters demanded massive payments of money immediately. My mother was deeply in debt to these criminals. I put the letters back, feeling a dark, sick understanding. My mother was a secret gambling addict. She owed huge amounts of money to the dangerous mafia. She was forcing me to play the piano so I could win expensive competitions to pay her dirty debts. She was using my blood and my pain to save her own life. She was selling my childhood to dangerous criminals. From that moment on, I promised myself I would destroy her plan. I swore I would break the very tool she used to make money. The grand piano sitting in my room was no longer a musical instrument. It was a hateful machine, and I was going to ruin it completely. I would not let her gamble away my entire future. The final, dark countdown to my violent revenge had officially begun. Part 2. The Ruined Hands. For many years, I survived the daily torture of the piano. I practiced perfectly, hiding my dark plan deep inside my angry heart. Every note I played was a silent promise of future revenge. When I finally turned 18 years old, a beautiful letter arrived in the mail. It was a full scholarship to the most famous, prestigious music academy in the entire country. This was my golden ticket to freedom. I could finally leave this terrible house and escape my mother's cruel, endless control. I proudly showed her the official academy letter that morning. I expected her to be happy. I thought she would finally let me go into the real world to win her precious money. My mother looked at the beautiful paper for a long time. Her face showed absolutely no emotion. She did not smile or say congratulations. Without saying a single word, she ripped the letter into tiny, useless pieces. She threw the shredded paper onto the cold wooden floor. "You are never leaving this house, Leo," she said with a flat, cold voice. "You will not go to any academy in the city. You will stay in your room and play the piano here until I say you can stop," she commanded. She walked out and locked the heavy door again. The sound of the metal lock clicking broke something permanently inside my brain. The hatred finally exploded completely. I looked at the grand piano. It was the only reason I was trapped in this nightmare. I walked to my small closet and pulled out a heavy metal hammer. I kept it to fix my broken bed, but today it was going to be my weapon. I stood in front of the clean, white piano keys. I raised the heavy hammer high into the air. I took a deep breath and did not hesitate. I brought the solid metal down with all my angry strength directly onto my own left hand. The terrible sound of breaking bones echoed loudly in the quiet room. I screamed in absolute, blinding agony, but I did not stop. I raised the heavy hammer again and smashed my right hand perfectly. My fingers were completely crushed, bent in unnatural, horrifying directions. Bright red blood stained the beautiful white keys. I had permanently, completely destroyed my ability to ever play a musical instrument again. The terrible pain was making me dizzy, but I felt a crazy, wild sense of victory in my heart. I had finally won the game. I threw the bloody hammer straight into the large mirror on the wall, shattering the glass into 1,000 pieces. My mother rushed into the room. She screamed in pure, absolute horror when she saw my ruined hands. She fell to her knees on the floor. I pushed past her shocked, crying body. I did not pack any clothes or take any money. I ran out of the front door and disappeared into the dark, rainy night. I left my cruel mother alone with the broken piano. I was finally, truly free forever. Part 3. The Runaway. 5 years passed. I lived a hard, quiet life as a manual laborer at a busy city port. My hands healed, but they were ugly, scarred, and permanently crooked. I could carry heavy wooden boxes, but I could never play a beautiful song again. I was perfectly happy with that. I lived in a cheap, tiny apartment near the dark water. I never called my mother. I completely erased her from my mind. However, every few months, a strange, thick envelope arrived at my door. There was never a name or a return address on the outside. Inside the envelope, there was always a large stack of clean cash. I knew exactly where it came from. I believed it was dirty gambling money from my mother. I thought she was trying to buy my forgiveness with her disgusting criminal profits. It made me incredibly angry. I never spent a single dollar of that money. I threw the envelopes into a dark corner of my closet, letting them gather dust. I did not want anything to do with her dangerous, criminal world. I just wanted to live my simple, quiet life in total peace. One rainy afternoon, I was resting in my small apartment after a long day of heavy lifting. Someone knocked loudly on my door. I opened it and saw 2 serious police officers standing in the hallway. They did not look angry. They looked at me with deep pity. "Are you Leo?" the older officer asked quietly. I nodded my head, feeling a sudden, cold fear in my stomach. The officer sighed heavily. "I am very sorry to bring you terrible news," he said. "Your mother, Martha, was found dead in her home early this morning." I stopped breathing. The woman I hated for so long was dead. "How did she die?" I asked, my voice completely flat. The younger officer stepped forward. "She was brutally murdered, Leo," he explained. "It was a professional hit. The killers broke into the house during the night. We believe it was the work of a very dangerous, violent local gang, the older officer continued. They call themselves the Shadows. We suspect your mother owed them a massive amount of money. When she could not pay her debts, they decided to send a permanent, bloody message. My heart felt like a heavy stone. My mother was murdered by the exact same gambling gang I had discovered when I was a child. Her dirty addiction had finally caught up with her. She had traded her life for useless, stupid gambling debts. I felt absolutely empty. The police officers gave me a small box of her personal items and quietly left my apartment. I sat on my cheap bed, staring at the box. I thought I would feel happy that my cruel prison guard was dead. Instead, I only felt a dark, confusing sadness. I realized that I needed to go back to that terrible house. I needed to see the place where the nightmare finally ended. I wanted to look at the broken piano one last time. I packed a small bag, ready to face the ghosts of my dark past. Part 4: The Fortress. I traveled back to my old hometown the very next morning. The streets looked exactly the same, but my childhood house felt completely different. The police tape was still wrapped around the front gate. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped into the quiet, dark hallway. The house smelled like old dust and dried blood. As I walked through the rooms, I noticed something very strange. When I was a child, I always thought this was just a normal, boring house. But looking at it now with adult eyes, I saw a terrifying truth. The house was actually a heavily fortified prison. I looked closely at the large windows in the living room. Hidden perfectly inside the white wooden frames were thick, solid steel bars. The front and back doors were reinforced with heavy, military-grade metal plates and complex, expensive locking systems. Why would a simple woman need such a massive, extreme level of security? It did not look like she was hiding from normal debt collectors. It looked like she was trying to survive a massive war. I walked slowly up the stairs toward my old, familiar bedroom. I pushed my bedroom door open. The room was a complete disaster. The beautiful grand piano was completely destroyed. The killers did not just break it, they had chopped it into tiny pieces with a heavy axe. Wood and wire were scattered violently all over the bloody floor. The police had told me a chilling detail about the murder scene. When they found my mother's body, the killers had left a terrifying, symbolic message. Resting perfectly on the center of her chest was a single, white piano key. The key was completely covered in dark blood. It was a clear, deliberate threat. But why did they care about the piano? If this was just about gambling money, they would have stolen the expensive TV or the jewelry. Instead, they focused all their violent anger on destroying the instrument that ruined my entire childhood. I stood in the middle of the broken room, feeling a deep, confusing fear. The story of the gambling debts was starting to make no sense at all. Normal mafia collectors do not build steel cages and chop up pianos. This was something much darker and deeply personal. I decided to stay in the house for a few days. I needed to find the real truth about my mother's secret life. I started carefully searching every single closet, drawer, and hidden corner of the dark house. I was looking for any small clue or hidden document. I pulled up the old carpets and checked behind the dusty paintings. I was going to find out exactly why the Shadows murdered her. I wanted to understand the bloody piano key. I promised myself I would uncover her darkest secrets, even if it put my life in danger. Part 5: The Enemy in the Dark. My angry search through the dark house continued for 3 long days. Finally, I went to the local police station to ask for the official investigation files. The detective in charge was a kind, older man. He felt sorry for me and allowed me to read the confidential documents. I sat in a quiet room and opened the thick, brown police folder. I expected to find a long history of dirty casino records and illegal gambling debts. Instead, my eyes widened in pure shock. The official financial investigation proved that my mother had never gambled in her life. There were absolutely no casino records, no strange bets, and no hidden gambling accounts. The threatening letters I found as a child were not about gambling at all. The police file explained that the money my mother paid to the Shadows was actually a forced protection fee. She had been paying a massive, impossible amount of money to this violent gang every single month for 18 years. She worked multiple secret jobs just to afford the payment. She gave them every penny she earned. She essentially lived like a starving slave to pay this dark tax. I read the next page of the file, and my blood turned to ice. The leader of the Shadows was a completely insane, psychopathic criminal. Everyone in the violent underworld simply called him the Maestro. He was famous for his cruel, musical methods of torturing his poor victims. The Maestro had personally ordered the brutal murder of my mother. The police report stated the exact reason for the hit. My mother had suddenly stopped paying the monthly protection money exactly 5 years ago. She had cut off the cash supply on the exact day I ran away. I sat in the police station, completely paralyzed by this new, terrifying information. Why did she pay them for 18 years? And why did she stop paying them the moment I broke my hands and left the house? The pieces of the puzzle were completely wrong and deeply confusing. If she was not paying for her own gambling debts, what exactly was she buying from this psychopathic gang? I closed the heavy police file. The truth was hiding somewhere in the dark, violent streets of the city. I needed to find someone connected to the Maestro immediately. I thanked the kind detective and walked out into the cold night. My hatred for my mother was slowly turning into a terrifying mystery. I decided to enter the dangerous, criminal underworld. I was going to find one of the Maestro's men and force him to tell me everything. I went to a dirty, dark bar near the city port. I knew criminals used this place to drink and hide. I sat in the corner and watched the dangerous men. I was looking for anyone with the gang's famous black tattoo. I was ready to risk everything for answers. Finally, I saw a large, angry man with the dark shadow tattoo on his neck. He was drinking alone. I gripped a heavy glass bottle in my scarred hand. I took a deep breath and walked slowly toward his table. The real, dangerous hunt for the absolute truth had begun. Part 6. The Devil's Identity. I waited for the large, tattooed man to leave the dirty bar. He walked into a dark, empty alley behind the building. I moved quickly and silently. I hit him hard on the back of the head with my heavy bottle. He fell to the wet ground, completely stunned. I dragged him deeper into the shadows and tied his hands with a thick rope. When he finally woke up, he looked at me with angry, violent eyes. "Who are you?" he spit at me. I stepped closer, letting the dim street light reveal my scarred, ruined hands. "My name is Leo," I whispered coldly. "My mother was Martha. Your boss, the Maestro, murdered her. I want to know exactly why she paid him for 18 years. The gangster stared at my broken hands. Suddenly, he started laughing. It was a loud, cruel and completely evil laugh. "You stupid, blind boy," the gangster laughed, blood dripping from his mouth. "Your mother was not paying protection money for her own life. She was paying a ransom. She paid us every single month to ensure our assassins did not touch you. She was buying your safety, you idiot." My heart stopped beating. "Why would you want to kill me?" I demanded, pressing my shoe against his chest. The gangster smiled a terrifying, sick smile. "Because of who your father is, Leo. Do you really not know the true identity of our boss, the Maestro?" he asked mockingly. The super plot twist hit me like a massive, speeding train. The gangster looked at my shocked face with pure joy. "The Maestro is Marcus," he revealed happily. "Marcus is your biological father. He is a violent psychopath. Your mother ran away from him when you were a baby. Marcus swore a blood oath to find you," the man explained. "He promised to kidnap you and chop off every single one of your fingers to punish Martha for running away. When he finally found her, Martha begged for your life. She made a desperate, impossible deal with the devil. She agreed to pay him a massive fortune every month," the gangster whispered. "As long as she paid, Marcus let you keep your fingers. He let you live. She was a slave to save your hands." The entire universe crashed down on my shoulders. I could not breathe at all. My mother was not a greedy monster. She was a desperate, terrified prisoner. She forced me to stay in the house to protect me from a psychopathic father who wanted to mutilate me. She endured my deep hatred to keep me alive. But the mystery of the piano remained. I left the gangster tied up in the dark alley and ran blindly through the city streets. My mind was completely broken by the horrific truth. The cruel prison guard was actually an invisible, bleeding shield. She took all my anger to keep the real monster away from my door. I ran all the way back to the dark, heavily fortified house. I rushed up the stairs to my destroyed bedroom. I stared at the chopped pieces of the grand piano. I needed to understand the final, missing piece of the puzzle. Why did she force me to play? Part 7. The Secret of Vibration. I sat on the bloody floor of my ruined bedroom. I looked at the broken pieces of the grand piano. If she was just hiding me from my psychopathic father, why did she force me to play music for 10 hours a day? Why did she beat me when I stopped? I began to tear the room apart again. I ripped up the heavy carpets. I grabbed a metal tool and started prying the thick wooden floorboards up, right where the piano used to stand. I pulled up a large piece of wood and found a secret, hidden space underneath. Inside the dark hole was a small, dusty medical box. My hands shook violently as I opened it. Inside were dozens of old, yellow hospital records. I pulled out the first document and read the doctor's messy handwriting. The medical truth I discovered completely destroyed my soul forever. The hospital report stated that when I was 3 years old, my father Marcus had attacked my mother. He hit her in the head with a heavy iron pipe before she managed to escape. The massive trauma caused permanent, irreversible damage. My mother was 100% profoundly and completely deaf. She could not hear a single sound. She had lived in absolute, terrifying silence for 18 years. I dropped the paper, gasping for air. My mother was deaf. She never heard a single note of my piano music. She never heard me cry, and she never heard me scream. The ultimate, devastating truth exploded in my brain. I looked at the hollow space under the floorboards. The heavy grand piano sat directly over this empty, wooden echo chamber. When I hit the heavy piano keys, the sound waves created strong physical vibrations that traveled down through the wood. Because she was completely deaf, the physical vibration of the floor was the only way she could interact with the world. She forced me to play the piano constantly, not for the music, but for the vibration. The vibration traveling through the floor was her only connection to my life. When I played, she could feel the rhythm in her feet. It told her that I was alive, that I was safe in my room, and that the monster had not taken me yet. When the playing stopped, the vibration stopped. The silence meant absolute danger. The silence meant death. When I stopped playing to rest my fever, she felt the terrifying, sudden silence. She panicked, thinking Marcus had broken into the house and stolen me. She rushed in and hit me out of pure, desperate fear, forcing me to create the life-saving vibrations again. She was protecting my life. She never cared about musical competitions or fame. She only cared about feeling the steady heartbeat of her child through the wooden floorboards. The piano was not an instrument of torture. It was a desperate lifeline for a deaf mother terrified of a psychopathic killer hunting her only son. I sat in the empty room, surrounded by the medical papers and the broken wood. The truth was heavier than the entire world. I had completely misunderstood her strict, violent actions. Every single thing she did was carefully designed to keep me breathing, safe from a man I never knew. Part 8. The Ultimate Regret. I fell forward onto the dusty floorboards. I screamed and cried with absolute, agonizing regret. The day I smashed my own hands with the hammer, I thought I was hurting a greedy monster. I thought I was finally claiming my freedom. But the reality was unspeakably cruel and heartbreaking. When I broke my hands and ran away into the night, I completely destroyed her only lifeline. I took away the vibrations. I abandoned a completely deaf woman in a silent, terrifying house. She had no way to know if I was dead or alive for 5 long years. The anonymous envelopes of cash I received suddenly made perfect sense. When I ran away, my mother immediately stopped paying the ransom money to Marcus. She did not care about her own life anymore. She took all that protection money and secretly sent it to me to ensure I survived. She traded her own safety for my financial security. She knew Marcus would eventually come to kill her for stopping the payments, but she accepted her bloody fate to keep me fed. She died alone in the silent darkness so that I could live in the light. My chest hurt so much I thought my heart would physically break. I was drowning in an ocean of guilt and sorrow. Suddenly, the door to the bedroom crashed open. I looked up through my tears. A tall, terrifying man with cold, dead eyes walked into the ruined room. It was Marcus, the Maestro. He was surrounded by 4 large, armed men. He looked at my scarred, broken hands and smiled a sickening, evil smile. "Hello, son," Marcus laughed softly. "I see you finally figured out the truth about your crazy, deaf mother. It is a very sad story." His men grabbed me roughly and pulled me to my knees. "She was a foolish woman," Marcus spat, looking at the chopped piano. "She stopped paying my money 5 years ago. I finally decided to come and collect my debt. She did not even hear us break down the door." Marcus walked closer and grabbed my chin forcefully. "I promised I would take your fingers, Leo," he whispered cruelly. "But you already ruined them yourself. How disappointing. However, I can still finish the job and kill you right here." He pulled a heavy, silver gun from his dark coat. I did not feel afraid of the gun. I only felt a burning, absolute hatred for the monster who destroyed my family. I looked directly into his psychopathic eyes. "You are a coward," I whispered fiercely. "She was 10 times stronger than you will ever be. You are nothing." Marcus laughed loudly, but his eyes flashed with real, violent anger. He pressed the cold metal barrel of the gun directly against my forehead. "Strong words for a dead boy," he sneered. "Let us see how brave you are when you join your deaf mother in the silent grave." I closed my eyes, ready to accept my punishment for leaving her alone. I deserved to die in this room. But as the cold gun pressed harder against my skin, my eyes opened, and I noticed something strange carved into the remaining wood of the broken piano frame nearby. Part 9. The Melody of Death. Marcus smiled and pulled back the hammer of the gun. "Before I shoot you," Marcus said cruelly, "I want you to play one last song for me. Use your ruined, ugly hands and play on these broken pieces of wood." He kicked a piece of the piano toward me. I looked down at the broken wood. My eyes focused on the strange scratches carved deeply into the frame. They were a specific pattern of short and long lines. I suddenly remembered a very weird, specific rhythm my mother used to force me to play every single morning for years. It was not a classical song. It was a strange, repetitive sequence of heavy and light notes. I thought she was just crazy. But looking at the lines carved into the wood, the super plot twist exploded in my mind. The weird rhythm was not music. It was Morse code. My mother knew Marcus would eventually find her. She knew she could not fight him. So, she used the daily piano practice to secretly plant a code deep into my muscle memory. She forced my hands to memorize a specific rhythm. That rhythm was a set of secret geographical coordinates. It was the exact location of a hidden storage unit where she kept a lifetime of evidence against Marcus's criminal empire. But there was something even more brilliant. I noticed thin, hidden electrical wires running under the wooden floorboards, perfectly connected to the hollow echo chamber beneath the piano area. My mother had secretly installed an underground, vibration-sensitive alarm system. I looked up at Marcus, feigning absolute terror. I slowly raised my scarred, broken hands. I placed them on the wooden floorboards directly over the hidden wires. I did not need piano keys. I just needed to make the vibration. I took a deep breath and began to tap the floor with my ruined fingers. I tapped the exact, strange Morse code rhythm she forced me to learn. Short, long, short. Heavy, light, heavy. I hit the floorboards with all my strength. The sound echoed loudly in the small room. Marcus laughed, thinking I was just a crazy, broken boy obeying his final order. "Beautiful music, Leo," he mocked. He did not know that my tapping was sending a massive, silent electronic distress signal directly to the regional FBI headquarters. My mother's brilliant trap was finally, perfectly activated. I kept tapping the rhythm desperately, putting every ounce of my remaining energy into the wooden floor. My bloody, scarred knuckles ached, but I did not stop. The rhythm was my mother's final voice speaking from the grave, crying out for ultimate justice against the monster standing above me. Marcus grew bored of my frantic tapping. He raised the silver gun again, aiming it directly at my heart. "Enough of this stupid game," he said coldly. "Say hello to Martha for me." My heart raced as I hit the floor one last, powerful time. I braced for the gunshot. I closed my eyes tightly, waiting for the sudden darkness. But the gunshot never came. Instead, the quiet night was suddenly shattered by a completely different sound. The massive, beautiful roar of justice was finally arriving at the fortified house, completely surrounding the arrogant devil in the room. Part 10. The Sound of Silence. The sound of heavy helicopters filled the night sky. Bright spotlights shined through the broken windows. Loud police sirens screamed from every direction. The FBI had received the silent alarm and tracked the signal immediately. They knew about this heavily fortified house and were waiting for the final code to attack. Marcus and his men panicked wildly. They ran toward the door, but it was far too late. Dozens of heavily armed federal agents crashed through the windows and rushed up the stairs. They threw flash grenades into the room, blinding the criminals. The agents tackled Marcus to the floor instantly. I sat on the wooden floor, completely safe, watching the evil monster get arrested. The FBI decoded the coordinates hidden in the Morse code rhythm. They raided Marcus's secret storage units and found enough illegal evidence to send him to federal prison for the rest of his miserable, pathetic life. The nightmare was permanently over. Marcus was locked in a dark cell with no chance of parole. The dangerous gang was completely destroyed. The agents gently helped me out of the ruined house. I walked into the cool night air, finally breathing freely for the first time in my life. A few days later, I went to the quiet, peaceful city cemetery. I walked slowly to my mother's fresh grave. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. I did not bring expensive, colorful flowers. Flowers were for people who could see beauty. I brought something much more meaningful and deeply personal. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a large, heavy metal tuning fork. I knelt down in the soft green grass next to her white headstone. I took a deep breath and struck the tuning fork hard against the solid edge of the stone. The metal began to hum. I quickly pressed the vibrating metal deep into the dirt of her grave. Then I pressed both of my scarred, ruined hands flat against the ground next to it. I closed my eyes and felt the strong, steady vibration traveling through the earth, sinking deep into the dark, silent ground. I stayed there for a long time, sending the steady rhythm down to her. I wanted to make absolutely sure she felt it. In the quiet, dark world beneath the grass, my deaf mother could finally feel that her son was safe. She could feel my endless, deep, profound apology. The music in my life was never about beautiful notes or famous competitions. It was always about survival, incredible sacrifice, and a fierce, unspoken love. My mother gave her life to buy my ultimate freedom. I smiled through my tears, keeping my hands on the earth, playing one final song. I will never play a grand piano in a concert hall, but my heart is completely at peace. The silent piano is gone, but the protective love of my mother will resonate in my soul forever. She defeated the devil in absolute silence, and she gave me back the world.